kind of form. So you're going to get some behind the scenes sneak peeks about how I create my content, and you're going to have the opportunity to give me feedback about what's missing or what you would like to see in the future. I'm really excited to engage with you on Patreon, as well as I'm coming out with several e-courses that are in the process of being developed right now. And all of my e-courses are going to be able to be accessed through the Patreon account by being a game-changing member. So go check out the Patreon if you haven't done it already. And of course, if you have never been to my YouTube channel, I do a lot of discussion there on lots of different topics, and a live stream at least twice a week, once after my episode releases on Wednesday evenings, and also on Sunday afternoons, where we talk about a different topic every week. And again, my channel members and subscribers get to decide what topics we're going to talk about. So going back to this idea of black and white, in 2016, I made the decision to begin removing unhealthy relationships from my life. I went no contact with my parents because I needed to create an empty space so that I could heal from the damage that was done in my childhood home with all of those unhealthy relationships. It was kind of like stopping time and examining everything in that still mode where there was silence, and I could contemplate the people in my life and whether or not those relationships were helping me or harming me. It was really interesting sharing my family stories and my stories from my childhood with my therapist and watching her reactions. Because as a defense mechanism, I learned as a child to read people really carefully by watching their emotions develop on their faces and by anticipating their next move or reading their body language to see what their mood was. That way I could pretty accurately predict whether or not I was in danger, about to get in trouble, about to get punished, or something of that nature. Seeing my therapist react taught me that what I'd been through as a child was abusive. Of course, I thought that it was normal, but saying those words out loud for the first time were transformational for me. And the more that I learned about what abuse looks like and how abusive people behave, the more adept I became at applying what I'd learned to other situations and relationships. I started applying those skills to movies and TV shows too. It's pretty accurate to say that I developed a new lens through which to view the entire world around me. And the more that I healed from manipulation and coercive control, the less tolerant I became of those controlling behaviors. The more sure I became of myself, the more observant I became of others. It feels easy for us as human beings to conserve our cognitive resources by dividing things into black and white and right and wrong. It's just a simple way to do things. It saves us effort and energy. But the truth is that life is not that simple, and people are not that simple. People are complex constructs of their intellect and their environment. We as humans are a collection of hardwired instincts that are informed by the world around us and our experiences with the other people in the world. So here we are at the conclusion of another presidential election, and many people are in that black and white world. You're either a Republican or a Democrat. You're either pro-life or pro-choice. You're either for Israel or Palestine. You either support Ukraine or you don't. Now, I'm not here to pass judgment on any one of those opinions, black or white, right or wrong, any of those things. I'm not going to put a value statement on a political party or an ideology or a social issue. But I would love it, beautiful humans, if just for a moment we could create a new space. One where we take off those black and white glasses and enter into this empty room where we see each other as fellow human beings. Is it possible for us to set aside our egos and in this new empty space, remember that we are all alike? I've said this so many times that we all want the same things. We all want love and belonging. We all want community. We all want prosperity for ourselves and for our children. But we as a nation, and especially as a world, have regressed back into tribalism, that very primitive form of human existence where we other people according to their tribal costume. We stay with our little group of people and we attack everyone who is different from us or who thinks differently from us. But in this new space, in this empty room, away from black and white, Can we remove the labels and look at each other's faces instead? Can we look in each other's eyes and see not tribes, but individuals? Can we look in someone else's eyes and see ourselves? Can we look at someone and see a mother or a sister or a daughter? Can we see a brother or an uncle or a friend? It makes me think back to when I was voting for the first time in a presidential election. It was back in 1992. I was 17 years old, and I was getting ready to register to vote for the first time. And I was fairly certain where my parents and other family members stood politically, but it was another one of those sticky subjects we never really talked about openly. I mean, not even the weather was a safe topic in my childhood home because whatever was or wasn't happening would end up being my fault. But politics was one of those first places that I differentiated from my family. I very carefully studied the platforms of both major political parties, and I listened to the candidates' debates and the speeches, and I read the articles. And I came to the conclusion that there were things that I both agreed and disagreed with on both sides of the aisle. And so when I registered to vote, I registered as an independent. And I think that gave me a little bit of freedom because I didn't feel tied to one party. I felt like I could objectively examine the issues in the candidates and make a choice not based on party, but based on how much a particular candidate aligned with what I really believed and what I thought was most important. And at the end of the day, I want to see politicians as fellow humans. We're all flawed. We all have strengths and weaknesses. We all have redeeming qualities, and we all have a shadow side. And I do mean that about literally every candidate. I think there's something good that you can find in every candidate and something awful you can find in every candidate. And there's a lot of in between. And what we have to do is we have to pull apart our own psyche from those decisions. And this country was meant to be a republic where we find someone that best represents our views and then instill them with the power to vote on our behalf. And I think we've totally lost sight of that as a nation. And whenever an election cycle ends, I see and hear all of these extreme reactions. Both sides say they were going to move out of the country if the other side wins. And both sides say they'll never forgive the other side for things that they have done or said, or their policies, or their decisions. And believe it or not, both sides have made the case that the outcome of the election is life or death. And I frankly believe both sides. It's true. But can we just pause for a moment? Can we just reflect? Is it possible for us to open our minds and see nuances in the other side that we haven't yet considered? There's one thing behind all of this division and all of this hatred for one side or the other, and it's fear. At our core, we are afraid of change. We are afraid of the unknown. We are afraid of our lives seeming meaningless. We're afraid of being forgotten, and we're afraid of the responsibility that comes with the choices that we make. Choosing a side has consequences, both for the negative and the positive. But our fears are just a protection against our unhealed wounds. And when we're wounded, we develop behaviors and attitudes that we think will protect us from being hurt again in the future. And the trouble is, when we try to protect ourselves from everything that will hurt us, we also prevent ourselves from feeling connection and feeling love and belonging. And I think it was Brene Brown said that you can't protect yourself from pain without also protecting yourself from love. And one of our modes of protection is to see a person as only their flaws. It's so easy to do that, especially in a character that is on the public stage. They're boldly proclaiming their opinion, and it's really easy for us to pick out all the things that are wrong with that person. And we refuse to see their good qualities. And we tell ourselves that their bad qualities far outweigh anything positive that they may have to offer. The reason we're so good at picking out certain flaws in people is because those flaws are the exact traits that we dislike in ourselves. When we see only the negative in others and only the good in ourselves, that's narcissism. And when we see only the bad in ourselves and only the good in others, that's self-betrayal or self-abandonment. And neither of those extremes is healthy. We need to recognize that none of us are all sinner or all saint. And I think we know that about ourselves, but we forget that when we're comparing ourselves to other people. The truth is that we all have the same intrinsic value, and that external value judgments about whether or not someone is a good person will be flawed by our own lens and distorted by our personal experience and by the way that we feel about ourselves and the flaws that we haven't yet addressed and the wounds that we haven't yet addressed. And we sometimes judge each other for our choices, for each other's choices, without fully understanding the individual or fully understanding all of the circumstances that surrounded that choice. We are really harsh with others when we see things in them that we abhor about ourselves. And we tend to try and not address those things and see people as their choices rather than trying to understand why they might have made the choice that they made. I think the challenge of humanity and the path to connection is to step away from the easy path of black and white thinking, of either all good or all bad, and find some new words to describe the fact that we all have qualities about ourselves that we like and find acceptable, and we all have qualities about ourselves that we dislike and find unacceptable. Just the same as these facts are true about ourselves, they're also true about everyone else. So if we can accept that these facts are true about politicians and people, that they're not just black and white, there are gray areas, we're complicated, we can also accept that this is true of social issues as well. Social issues are not black and white. There are multiple angles from which to view a story. But sometimes when we're inundated from all sides with opinions on a particular issue, we get overwhelmed and we pick a side out of fear of abandonment by our friends, our family members, our colleagues, our social circles. We want that belonging and that inclusion so much that sometimes we set aside our critical thinking and we just choose a side so that we are agreeing with other people. We're avoiding those uncomfortable conversations. And instead of trying to listen and understand all the complicating factors, sometimes we speak up too soon without really realizing everything that's involved in an issue. We can't possibly listen to every voice on every issue. We simply don't have the time. It's just an overwhelming amount of information. So sometimes we outsource our decision making by allying ourselves with voices that resonate with our own, like news channels or pundits or podcasters, celebrities, or even politicians themselves. But one problem with that behavior is that two people can't possibly agree on every single thing. So even when I pick my favorite podcaster to listen to for a certain story or news source on a particular issue, we might agree on most things, but let's say that there's one thing in particular that I think that they're wrong about and it's a key issue. But I've already outsourced my political opinions to that person because it's easier than overcoming the inertia required to study every single topic on my own. So instead of digging in and trying to find my own information, going to source documents and looking for validation of the truth, instead I start looking for a confirmation bias to help me agree with them rather than searching for a new source or grappling with that dissonance that comes up when we disagree with somebody. And so this way we sort of convince ourselves to agree with someone even when it doesn't really align with our values. So in the digital age, of course, it's so easy for us to just read a post, agree with it, and like it and share it in less than a few seconds, just as we're swiping along, before we even take the few more seconds that it would require for us to do some quick searches and see if the information is true or valid or credible, or if it comes from a credible source, before we spread it out to our whole network. I may be scrolling through Instagram and see a post by my daughter, or she may see a post of mine and she trusts me, she trusts my opinion. But what if I reposted something that had been reposted by someone I trusted, but that had been originally created by a spurious source? I wouldn't know, and neither would my daughter or anyone else in her trusted network, unless one of us took the time to fact check it and challenge it. But we're not doing that work because it's so much easier to just post it and say, oh, this came from a person I trust. I agree with them. I'm going to repost this too. It resonates with me. But we haven't done the work to consider whether the picture is real, whether it's been photoshopped, whether the information came from a credible source. And that's why we have such a spread of misinformation all of the time. It's like we haven't educated ourselves on how to consume media responsibly. It's just so much easier to take a hit of the dopamine, that quick hit that gets created when we see something that resonates with us, and the next quick hit when it gets likes and shares. And those hits of euphoria feel so much better than the grounding separation of disagreement. Disagreeing with a post, choosing not to pass it on, choosing to pause and wait and do some digging and research before we just throw it out there as something credible. So coming back to the idea of disagreement, and it's very sad to me that we, the people, have lost the ability to engage in civil discourse. The activity of presenting opposing viewpoints rationally and telling the truth dispassionately, without judgment, without shaming people. And it's this ability to challenge the argument with civility rather than to insult the individual, the argument, not the individual. Although our founding fathers were not averse to slinging insults, certainly, they were averse to presenting information that was not factual. And I would argue that political disagreements, arguments today contain so much misinformation on both sides that it becomes incumbent upon us to consume media responsibly and fact check the issues that are most important to us. We can't fact check them all because, again, we don't have time, but we have to choose the things that are most important values and then spend the time on those particular issues. So I recognize for myself that when I get defensive, I lose the ability to listen objectively. And I have to ask myself, why is that? And for me, it's because my defensiveness is literally the protection of a wound. And I think this is true for most people too. When someone questions my intelligence or challenges the truth of my experiences, the warrior part of me immediately wants to fight back. And I have to resist the urge to let her. Instead, I ask her to stand beside me while I listen. Because really, when someone's challenging me instead of my argument, they're telling me a story about themselves. And above all, I want to listen to the stories and experiences of my fellow human beings. The ability to do that comes from healing my own wounds enough to know the story they're telling is not about me. It's about them. And by listening to each other's stories, we gain the ability to help each other heal. So, because I think at this particular moment, there are a lot of people who are in defense mode, I don't want to address any particular social or political topics, although pretty much everything feels political right now. But what I do hope to accomplish is to help everyone just zoom out a bit. Let's zoom all the way out and look at the whole solar system. Think about how small we are. Think about how old the universe is. Think about this moment in time and remember what matters most to you. For me, it's my family, my relationships, my people, my friends. And it saddens me to hear that people are re-engaging in cancel culture. I keep hearing, if you voted for, insert candidate's name, no, we can't be friends, and no, I'm not going to explain why. When we stop listening, we stop learning. When we stop understanding others, we hinder our ability to understand ourselves. When we cancel someone with whom we disagree, we banish a part of ourselves that is similar to that person in some way. So really, disconnecting from others is disconnecting from ourselves. And if we stop listening to others, we lose the ability to listen to our own inner voice. We stop growing. And when we stop growing, parts of ourselves start dying. Let's zoom back in for a minute. Zoom back into the human family and then zoom in a little more. A couple of months ago, my daughter invited me to come to Hawaii and help her celebrate her 30th birthday. She asked if we could take some professional pictures while we were together, and I was so happy to be with her and her little family and two of my other daughters. We met on the beach early in the morning for photos. After the photographers snapped a few pictures, my grandson yelled something out. I didn't hear him at first, so my daughter told him, "Louder so everyone can hear." He then exclaimed, "We're pregnant." Jasmine clicked away while we yelled and cried and embraced. The world stopped. My daughter is going to be a mother to a daughter. I'm going to become Mimi again. In these moments, does it matter if we disagree? Does it matter if our relationships aren't perfect? Does it matter if we are not perfect? How heartbreaking it would be to miss out on moments like this because I failed to apologize, or because they failed to accept me, or because we let our differences divide us instead of letting our sameness unite us. Some of the most important conversations of my life have been ones in which we disagree, but we want to understand. Even when someone's point of view disappoints me, I want to understand why they feel the way that they do. And more often than not, there was something I was missing, or there was a wound I couldn't see. And when I understand, it doesn't mean I now agree, but it does mean that I see with new eyes. We have work to do. We have wounds to heal. We have relationships to repair. So let's stop seeing the world and the people in it as either one thing or another. Let's zoom in. Let's see all of them and all of us in all of our complexity and messiness, in all of our beauty and our imperfection. Let's love and accept all the parts of ourselves so that we will be able to better love others. Sorry. There. Hello. There we go. Hello. I literally have no idea what happened. I have some emails into support. I don't know what happened to the original video. So I don't know. I'm super frustrated. It's been a really difficult day, technical difficulties wise, and it's definitely like a learning curve that I'm trying to figure out. So I apologize. I don't know why the other video cut out. I had to set it to private because it literally froze, and I'm not sure exactly what went on, but I'm working on trying to get it fixed. So I tried to repost it here. I tried to just rig it so that you guys could at least see the rest of it. It's not a perfect system, but it was the only thing that I could think of in the moment to get it so that it would play the rest of the video. So there it is. Anyway, I'm glad you guys are here. Hi. Thank you for joining me. My brain is full of so many thoughts, because it has been a while since I've been able to engage with you guys. I've had my foot injury. I went and saw Heretic last night. Um, there's been the election. There have been lots of consequential conversations that have happened. And so I don't even really know where to begin this evening. I feel like this episode was a little bit of an echo of our conversation on Sunday. And I do have a more cohesive outline for what we talked about on Sunday as far as bullet points of how to prepare for a conversation with a loved one with whom you disagree regarding election issues or really anything, honestly, like any consequential issue, whether it is just a family issue or whether it's a larger social issue, like, that affects the entire community. Um, it's a really difficult thing to dig into those conversations, but I think it's so important to do that. If we value our relationships enough, then we want to engage in those conversations because we wanna do the hard work that it takes to keep those relationships intact, and it is hard work, and I think it's really easy to just give up and say, "Oh, well, they don't understand me, so I'm just gonna move on." Um, Thank you for this, and thank you guys to everybody who's here and putting up with this, nonsense. I just realized that things are not gonna run smoothly all the time, and that's just the way it's gonna be. It's frustrating for me, but, hopefully you guys are, weathering that tiny little storm, and it's okay. So, Miss Mojo Rising, thank you for being a member for 3 months. Thank you to everybody who is a member. Thank you to everybody who's here. Thank you to everybody who likes and subscribes. I really appreciate you guys supporting the channel, and I appreciate all of you guys who have signed up for group coaching and for individual coaching. It is literally my favorite thing in the world to connect with you individuals as human beings and just understand where you're at and understand the ways in which my experiences can help inform the things that you're going through too. And I always say I'm not an expert in anything but my own trauma, but if my experiences can help you to become unstuck somewhere in your life, that's what's valuable to me. So if you have a moment to like the episode, share it with somebody who you think needs to hear it and subscribe to the channel. That would be really meaningful to me. It's the best way to support the channel is to subscribe and to share episodes and to like episodes. It helps get out there in the algorithm. So I have a lot of thoughts, and I think that we sort of we've hashed through this whole thing about talking about difficult conversations, and we talked about it on Sunday. So I guess I just want to hear from those of you who are in the chat, those of you who are here listening and participating. Where do you want to go next? Do you want to go back and talk about the bullet points? I have like a step-by-step thing that I can share with you about how to engage with a family member or loved one when you guys disagree, whether it's political or something else that's really consequential. We could totally go back over that bullet point list. I have it much more concise now. That's also up on my Patreon if you want to go and visit it. I also just went to go see the movie Heretic last night. I have a lot of thoughts about that. I have so many thoughts about just, I don't know, lots of things. There are lots of things on my mind. So there are lots of directions that this live could go, but I always want to go in the direction that's going to be most helpful to you. So I guess let's just have a vote. All of you who are in the chat, who are participating and who have an opinion, let's say drop a 1 if you want me to go back list of how to engage with family members where you disagree with something that they believe or where they believe something that may be harmful to you. And then let's drop a 2 if you want to go over the Heretic movie, because that's kind of top of mind right now. And it's something I believe that is not just for Mormons, although it is a movie about sister missionaries going into a dangerous situation. It is not just for Mormons. It is something that I think everybody should hear. And then I definitely next week, well, actually, what is it? On today's Wednesday. Tomorrow, I'm going to drop an unpack of Secret Lives of Mormon Wives, episode 4. Yeah, I'm gonna keep doing that. And then I think on Friday, or at least on Friday or Saturday, I'm gonna do a bonus episode this week because Thanksgiving is coming up. And I think that it is so, so important to set some boundaries and ground rules coming into Thanksgiving about family interactions and figuring out the ways where we can interact with family and get what we need over the holidays, but not offend ourselves and not betray ourselves by putting ourselves in positions where we don't, we don't need to be. So, that's coming up as well. That's really been top of mind for me this last week as well, and I definitely wanna do some bonus content on that. Um, so yeah, Renee, I mean, sorry, started the wrong comment. Being an independent, I don't vote in primaries, that's true. Um, and that is I don't see it necessarily as problematic, it's just the way the two-party system is set up that I'm not allowed to vote in primaries, and that's okay with me because I don't think that a third party candidate is ever really gonna be viable, and also, I tend to really reserve until the last moment. I don't vote early, generally speaking, because I tend to, view all of the circumstances and situations that come to light during during those last weeks of the election, the October surprise and all that kind of stuff. Um, so I don't see it as a real detriment that I don't get to vote in primaries because I tend to sit back and view things for a long time anyway and wait until I really feel like I have a solid opinion before I vote. Um, so it looks like, I mean, not a lot of you voted, but it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 of you, 5 of you, 6 of you, 7, at least 7 of you want to go over the list. And it looks like 1, 2, 3 of you want to hear about Heretic, and then somebody said on a separate live. So that looks like the majority, you guys. We have this many electoral votes for the number one thing. So, okay, I will go back over the how to engage with loved ones when we disagree, because I think that it's relevant not only to the election, but also to the holidays coming up as well. I'm going to do a separate episode about setting and honoring your own boundaries for the holidays and really like meditating and thinking about what do you want to get out of the holidays? Like, what is it that you need? What is it that you want? I think so many of us engage in holiday celebrations because we feel obligated. Like, oh, well, mom always has Thanksgiving, so I have to go to mom's house. No, you don't. You do not. I'm right here giving you permission to say you do not have to do the traditional family thing at Thanksgiving just because that's what's always been done. What's more important than the dogma of the tradition is what you need as a human being. Do you need to connect with your family members and have that special time together to share a meal together, to break bread together, to have a conversation? If that's what you need, yes, go and do that. If that's not what you need, why would you do that? Again, it comes back to honoring what is the most loving thing to do for yourself over what is the thing that other people expect you to do, or what is the thing that other people want and need from you. Because that's not part of the equation. We are not thinking about that. We are thinking about what is important to you and what is necessary to you. So if what you need is to reconnect with family members and have a good meal together, then go do that. But if you don't need that, then don't do it. Find a new tradition, sing a new song, tell a new story, do a new thing. Do what is going to make you happy. I'm not going to comment on this. I'm just going to put it up here. And if I put it up here, it means that I think it's a valid point. That's all I'm saying. So that's all of that to just say, like, please give yourself permission to do what is best for you at Thanksgiving and to not do what is best for other people. Boundaries are important. Your needs are important. Your feelings are valid. And I'm just going to go on record right here and say, if you need me as an excuse for Thanksgiving, if you need me to call up whatever family member is hosting the meal and say, I'm so sorry, McSpunky is not available today because he and I have an appointment. And I will not explain further. And they can all sit and talk about it. Happy to do that if you guys need it. Okay, so I'm going to share this little bullet point with you guys, this little list. We talked about this on Sunday, but I think that it somewhat at least bears repeating. How to engage with loved ones when we disagree. Goodness, I hope I'm sharing the right thing. Let me look and make sure that you're not seeing my secret journal notes. Just kidding. My journal would be super boring. Sat on the couch today. Did not use crutches. Okay. I think I'm sharing the right tab now. All right. So this is not meant to be a comprehensive or exhaustive list for this topic, but merely some suggestions of how we might navigate difficult conversations with those we love, no matter what topics we disagree on. Number 1, don't assume. Just because a person belongs to a certain group or votes a certain way, don't assume that the person believes everything the group believes, or that the person, I'm going to edit this right here in real time, you guys. The person aligns with every ideal the group espouses. Make room for individuality and personal circumstances. So all of that is just to say that there are so many people who are like, oh, you voted for this party, so you must be blah. Please, let's not assume that. I have had so many great conversations with people who have said, okay, I voted for this party, but I don't really agree with everything that they say. I voted for them for XYZ reason. And it turns out it's a lot more complicated than just black and white, like this episode was just about. So please, let's not assume things about people because of their actions, unless we have a conversation with them where we give them the opportunity to share their experiences. And let's not project our experiences or our opinions onto their choices. Excuse me, you guys. Number 2, listen to others' experiences before trying to assert your opinion on their actions or their experiences. So I'm just going to put this as one bullet point in a talking point of this thing. I am a member of the LGBTQ community. I have 2 of my children who are members of that community. I personally only know one person who is trans, like where I've conversed with this person. I know one person who's non-binary. And so therefore, I don't feel like it's my position to talk about those issues because that's not my experience. I'm happy to listen to those people. I'm happy to listen to what their experiences are, but I don't feel like I'm qualified to be the one to comment on that. And the reason I say that is because there are so many political issues out there where the people commenting on them are not the people who are experiencing the consequences of the policy changes that are being made. And so I think it's really important for us to listen to the voices of the people who are most deeply affected by the laws and by the policy changes, rather than just thinking that we know best, what should be done. Let's listen to other people's experiences where we don't have experience. Is that better? Okay. Next, avoid blanket statements or broad generalizations about groups of people. For example, anyone who likes blank is blank. And I'm just going to use an example. Anyone who likes Kamala is a Trump hater. Anyone who likes Trump hates immigrants. Like, those are statements that I've heard recently on both sides of the aisle, and I think these broad generalizations are about, again, about tribalism. There needs to be space for people to have nuanced beliefs or to hold two seemingly opposing views. For example, the view that I believe that it is wrong to harm human life, but at the same time, I believe that choice is important. I'm not making a statement, I'm just using it as an example. It's possible to hold two opposing views at the same time. Those kind of views are messy. They don't fit into policy. They don't fit into laws that write neatly on the books. But that's why I think we should talk about it, because our views and our experiences are complicated. They're not black and white. There's a lot of gray area in between. And as a woman who has experienced some of the consequences of legislation over my body, I just want to say that maybe we should listen to more women who have had those kinds of experiences than listen to the men who are making the decisions over those laws. Maybe women should be maybe the laws should be more informed by the women who are experiencing those consequences. So, not to say one side or the other of the issue, but just to say that there are a variety of experiences, and my experience is very different from other people's experiences, and that's true of me being a mom, it's true of me being a teacher, it's true of me being a Mormon, it's true of almost everything that I've been through, that my experience is not the only one, and I'm always happy to listen to the experiences of other people and have my opinions informed by those experiences rather than just making a blanket statement that's really easy to do, but also dismisses a lot of other people's experiences and opinions as well. So, going back to this little bullet list here that I made. Number 4, ask good questions to understand the experiences and ideas of the other person. Clarify what you're hearing to ensure you're understanding their position and perspective. So, what I like to do is I like to listen to somebody talk about their experience, and then I like to say, I hear you saying X. Is that right? Or am I getting it wrong? Give them a chance to clarify, because it's possible that I heard it through the filter of my own experiences and that what I heard and understood was different than what they were trying to express. So leave room for that misunderstanding and re-clarify to make sure that you're hearing what they meant to express. And maybe they want to rephrase a little bit. So I agree. I remember that day. We were all Americans that day. There was very little division between us on that day. And I don't want to go back to that day, but I loved that feeling of feeling like we all cared about each other. We were all human beings that day. We were all beautiful human beings that day. There weren't political parties or anything like that. Um, that was that was an amazing day for that reason. It was also a terrible day, but yeah, I remember that. Um, So, number 5, repair relational damage first. If there are outstanding issues in the relationship, it's not the time to introduce a new issue. So, the only reason I put this in here is because I know that as we go about our day, we tend to have little issues that flare up or little annoyances that come to pass. And if we haven't addressed those things, then it's not the time to have a political discussion. It's not the time to introduce a new, very heavy issue if we haven't satisfied those little things that have bugged us first, because those are the most important things to talk about, especially with the people that we deal with on a day to day basis. Okay, just situating kiddos for Betty. Sorry, guys. A little break in the action here while you talk amongst yourselves. Okay, number 6. I want to make sure that I show it. Number 6, be intentional about time and place for these conversations. Plan ahead. Make sure you and your conversation partner have the time and emotional energy to have a consequential conversation, preferably in private, preferably when both people are not tired or stressed. Set a timer if necessary and plan to end at a specific time, even if a resolution has not been reached. Guys, I realize how idealistic this is and how difficult it is to schedule these kinds of things. So I'm not out here saying that you guys should, like, let's go at 5 p.m. on a Tuesday, and from 5 to 6 we're going to have this conversation. No one's going to interrupt us. Like, believe me, I know better than most people what it's like to do life with lots of kids and moving parts and, conflict and all of these things. But if it is a conversation that is going to change the nature of your relationship, it is worth setting aside the time, even if you have to get a babysitter, even if you have to go to a different location where nobody's going to be, even if you have to rent a hotel room for the evening, just to have a space where you can have those conversations. It is worth it. You are worth it. Your relationship is worth it to set aside the privacy and the time that you need to address the issues that are affecting your relationship, because I can guarantee you this thing: if you don't address it, it is going to fester, it's going to breed resentment, and it's not going to turn out well. These problems do not age well with time. It's better to address it early on than to let it fester and sit and build resentment and build anger and build judgment and build shame. All of those things are going to get worse over time. So it's better to address it. Set the time aside. I'm even dyslexic when I talk. Set the time aside to resolve those issues as quickly as you can, because that is going to make it so much easier. Okay, so the next one, prepare emotionally, meditate, and notice any emotions that come up when you envision the conversation and what outcome you would like to have. Write down talking points if it will help you remain calm and focused. Remind yourself that the end desire is not for the two of you to agree, but for the two of you to understand each other and respect each other's point of view. And I think that is the most important thing, is setting up those intentions in advance. And the next thing we're going to talk about is communicating those intentions to the other party. So, what do I want to get out of this conversation? What do I want the outcome to be? If we begin, and I hate to say, okay, Stephen Covey, you were right about at least one thing. Begin with the end in mind. What do I want the outcome to be? Well, that's how I'm going to start then. That's what's going to inform my entire conversation, is what I want to get out of this. And then the next part is communicating those intentions and ask the other party what their intentions are for the outcome. What do you hope to accomplish? What do they hope to accomplish? Let's say this is what I'd like to see at the end of this conversation. Then let's ask, how would you like it to end? What would you like to see at the end of the conversation? I think that's really, really important to communicate that so that you're both on the same page. And then the next one, be aware when emotions come up during the conversation, can you pause and name them? For example, what you said made me angry. I'm not sure why. Let me think about why for a moment. Pause, name the emotion, try to regulate your emotions by talking through why you might be feeling a specific emotion. And I will grant you, this is one of the hardest things to do. It is not easy to stop in the middle of a conversation, to pause and to say, hold on a second, I'm really angry. instead of just lashing out in the moment. It is a practice. It's a really difficult thing to do. It is part of learning how to communicate effectively, to be able to stop and say, okay, it is safe for me to feel angry. I trust the other person that I'm communicating with, so I can tell them that I'm angry and know that they're not going to take that personally. That is a trust that is developed over time. It's a trust that's developed with somebody taking the first step to say, um, hey, is it okay if I just say that I'm angry? I'm not angry at you, but I'm angry and I don't know why. That's something that, again, it develops over time, and it's something that is a relational technique that's really difficult to master. I'm not a master at it. I'm still practicing it. I'm still learning how to do it. But I think it's a really important skill to develop, because if I can stop in the moment and say, okay, what you just said right now made me feel really angry, and I don't know why. So let me just figure this out for a second. The ability to do that is really, really valuable. And yes, I love this Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg. Plenty of pearls of wisdom with his technique. Yes, I absolutely love this. I highly recommend it. I think it is a great resource. Sorry, my dog's tails are violent communication, not nonviolent communication. Give me one sec. Okay, guys, thanks for allowing me to be a human being. I literally live with velociraptors and children. It's crazy. I really like this. All we talk about at meals is math and economics. We're a family of nerds. Love it. Davis, the best thing for me at times is to pause and let it sit until I have the best words to communicate what I think and feel. And I really appreciate this, because I do the same thing. And I say, I'm not really sure exactly why I feel this way, but let me think about it. Because I want to make sure that I want to be really intentional with the words that I use. I think words are so important. I think words and the way that we say them, our tone of voice, have a resonance about them. And I think those vibrations have an impact on other people. And I think it's important to be really intentional about the words that we use and the tone of voice that we use as well. So let's see, on to the last thing here. And somebody asked, do I have this written down? I do. Literally, it's written down right here. It's on also on my Patreon. And I am going to also make a separate little video just with these things on it. So look for that as soon as I have the time to do it, which, you know, hopefully will happen soon. Okay. So we talked about when emotions come up, name the emotion, try to regulate the emotion. And by talking through why you might be feeling a specific emotion, if you can't say why in the moment, it is okay, because it's really hard to say why sometimes. So it might be better to just say, like, I'm feeling this thing. Let me figure this out later. Sometimes it takes me a few hours. Sometimes it takes me a day to figure out why that emotion came up. But it's always worth digging into that, because then I'm like, oh, that makes total sense. And then the last one is end with care. Ask good questions about the outcome of the conversation. How do you feel this went? Asking the other person, are you satisfied with the outcome of this? Do you feel heard and understood? Is there anything you need from me before we end? I think that last one is something that has been one of the most valuable things for me, is asking Is there anything that you need from me right now? How can I best help you? Is there something that I can do or say that's gonna make the situation better for you? And, I really appreciate the I appreciate this when my partner does this for me, when he says, "Is there something that you need from me? What do you need to hear from me? Is there anything that I need to do?" And that sort of gives me permission to think about, "Huh, what do I need in this moment, and what would be the most comforting thing for me to hear? Or what would be the most loving thing for someone else to do for me?" So, I really appreciate those things. So again, this is on my Patreon. I am going to make another video about it where it will be free on YouTube. But if you have the ability to join the Patreon, I'm going to be putting all of my behind the scenes first draft content on there. And in addition, I'm working on some e-courses. The first e-course that I'm going to put up there is how to deconstruct and reconstruct after a religious transition, whether you are leaving a high demand relationship or a high demand religion, how to navigate that and how to rebuild your life afterwards. The next one I'm going to be putting up, believe it or not, is if you are over 40 and you struggle with technology, email, online things, how to turn your YouTube notifications on, things like that. That's going to be another e-course that I'm doing. Um, yeah, there are a lot of good things to come. I can't really talk about all of it right now just because it's too much. It's a plan that's going to take me a couple of years to implement everything in it, but I have lots of ideas and lots of ways that I'm going to start building this channel and lots of outlets for you guys to have resources that are going to help improve the quality of your life. As always, I um I love connecting with you one-on-one. Coaching is my very favorite thing to do. I have a free discovery call that you can get at my website at third-verse.com. And I would love it if you would sign up for a free call, and I'd love to connect with you and just see if there are ways in which I can help you. Um, I love the idea of a book club, MB. It's something that I've toyed with a lot. Uh, I just don't know how to start because I've started so many other things. At the moment, I'm still sort of getting a hold on group coaching. We're doing group coaching every Sunday on 11 a.m. on Sunday mornings. There is also a lot of interest in an evening time slot, but I have not set that aside yet. So if you have feedback about, please email me, Megan at third-verse.com. I would love to hear from you. I'd love to hear your feedback. And if you're interested in an evening group coaching, I would love to have you do that. If you want to do our Sunday morning group coaching, I always want you to attend at least once for free. And I want you to be able to experience what it's like to do group coaching before I ever ask you to pay anything. Renee Michelle asks, "What are you reading right now?" Well, you can see these are all the books that I've hung on to for the moment. I've got Oscar Wilde right here. This is Renee Fleming's The Inner Voice. I've got Kitchen Confidential right here by Anthony Bourdain. And on my list of things that I have not read yet, this is Aster by really like famous Anderson Cooper, and John Grisham's new novel, The Exchange, which is a sequel of The Firm, which was a favorite of mine back in the 80s. And I'm also rereading Brittany Hartley's No Nonsense Spirituality. That's something that changed my brain, and so I wanted to dig back into it again. So I read it over the summer, and I've got it on my nightstand right now. Also on my nightstand, which like these are the books that like I'm like I will get to on a Saturday or Sunday when I have some time. But the ones on my nightstand right now are No Nonsense Spirituality by Britt Hartley. I just did an episode with her last week. If you haven't seen it yet, she is amazing and totally like such a smart and incredibly insightful human being. Her book is amazing. It blew me away. So that's why I'm reading it for the second time. Also on my nightstand, unfortunately, I have to say, is a book about Anthony Bourdain, not written by Anthony Bourdain. He used to do a show called Kitchen Confidential, or sorry, not called Kitchen Confidential. It was, um, No Reservations, where he traveled around the world and he would go to local people and eat with local people. And I love his writing and I love his shows because his writing is amazing, his voice is amazing. I loved listening to and watching all of those shows. This book I saw at Target, not Target, Costco, and it said Anthony Bourdain on it, but it turns out that it is another author who just compiled some of his writings, and it's kind of a world guide where you can go like, "Okay, if I'm going to Japan, then I'm gonna look up Japan in this book, and it's gonna have all the things Anthony Bourdain wrote about Japan." Um, so, I was hoping that it was gonna be more of his own writings, but it's kind of just a compilation. And yes, it was a very sad ending for him, and, that's a rabbit hole for another time because I have a lot of thoughts and feelings about that I can't really get into right now. And especially on this platform where you have to be really sensitive about the words that we say. I cannot say the words, so I'm not gonna dig into it right now, but that is something that maybe that's something that I need to do on Patreon because what I'm thinking is that on Patreon, I don't really have to watch what I say. I don't have to watch certain words that I say, and I can talk a little bit more about the the real feelings that I have. Although, I mean, obviously, I'm very transparent on here with how I feel about a lot of things. One of my clients mentioned to me one time that they were like, "Are you okay? I wanna make sure you're safe because you share a lot of really personal stuff, and I wanna make sure that you are protected." And I'm like, "Yes, yes, yes." There's a lot that I don't share, even with as transparent as I am on this channel. There are a lot of things that I could say on Patreon or a members only thing that I can't say here. And and the Anthony Bourdain thing is one of those things. So, anyway, just a thought that I put out there because I would love to be able to share some of those thoughts as well, where I don't have to be as censored and as edited. And I feel that way also about some of my feelings about the movie Heretic, and the things that I wanna say about that are not necessarily things that might be conducive to this particular platform. So I need to think and be intentional about how and when I share those thoughts as well. But there's a lot to say, and I do okay, so let me just delineate just a little bit. If you are more interested in the content that I talk about that is more of an ex-Mormon perspective, more of a leaving high demand religion perspective, TikTok is a great place for that. That's where I share a lot of that stuff. Instagram is where I share a lot more of my healing stuff. And this platform is where I share a lot more of my rebuilding stuff and moving forward stuff. So I try to be kind of intentional about how I curate the things that I put on each of those platforms. So I put a couple of videos up today about my feelings about Heretic. And I cannot say enough good things about this film. I think it was beautifully done. I think it was incredibly well written, well acted. I've never loved Hugh Grant more than I do now in this moment. And I have to say, like, leading up to like, I knew I wanted to go see Heretic, and so while I've been laid up with my dumb foot, I rewatched Sense and Sensibility. I rewatched Notting Hill, like, all of my like, Love Actually, all of my favorite Hugh Grant movies. And then, I, at the last minute, got this invitation to go and see Heretic with a group of ex-Mormons here in San Antonio, and I jumped at it. I was like, "Yes, 100%, that's the group I wanna go see it with." And I enjoyed it so much, and I think that whether you are Mormon or not Mormon, whether you've never been Mormon or you have no opinion, this movie is so thought-provoking. If you go into it with the idea of an open mind and saying, "I wanna hear someone else's perspective, I wanna view things from another point of view," it is just mind-blowing and amazing. Now, yes, it's a little bit gory, there are some horror elements, but I have to say, it's not gore for the sake of gore, it's not horror for the sake of horror, it's not egregious, it's not overbearing. I mean, it's just so well done. The story just is compelling. Anyway, I'm gonna do a whole unpack on that in another way. I just need to find out what the best way is to do it. Because this platform tends to be pretty persnickety, apparently, because I have no idea what happened to my video tonight, you guys. I don't know if it was the thumbnail. I don't know if it was the subject matter. I didn't even mention any hot button words or issues, and yet somehow my video got glitchy. So anyway, um, so MB, to answer this question just in real brief, I think a lot of people aren't seeing it because it's rated R, and we know how much Rusty does not like Mormons seeing rated R movies. Also, I think there's a lot of judgment just from the trailer itself, from people saying, "Oh, that's not accurate to like." Listen, guys, it's accurate. They did an excellent job. Again, I'm just going to have to unpack it. Please go see it first. I'm going to go on Letter Daily Digest where it's going to be all spoilers. So we're going to talk about the whole movie. So maybe if you don't want to see it, that's a good episode for you to see. But if you do want to see it, I would say I'm going to do a video, but I'm going to say like heavy spoilers just to just to warn you in advance in case you want to see it first and don't want spoilers. Stephanie Eubanks, Rusty is Russell M. Nelson, who is the current president of the Corporation of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Wow, that's a tongue twister. Also known as the prophet of the Mormon Church right now. He counsels us very heavily, or counsels the LDS members very heavily not to see rated R movies. So, if you don't have any of those other platforms, if you go to Patreon, patreon.com, yes, you can sign up for those things. But TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, this is where all my free content is. Patreon is pretty much going to be for a members thing for people who want the e-courses and things like that. So, yeah, so thank you guys for being here. I'm just laughing at some of these comments. I appreciate you guys so much. I've been on here way too long, rambling way too long, so I'm going to let you guys go and I'm going to try to get some rest. I feel like I have not been myself over the last couple of weeks the last week at least, because of this foot injury. The Patreon is up, MB, thank you. And yeah, it's like the Catholic Church in the 1960s, 100%. I feel like this foot injury has made me kind of cranky, and I haven't been sleeping well. I really haven't been myself. I've been trying to stick with my routine, and I've been really proud of myself that on the last Sunday and Wednesday and Sunday and Wednesday, I have been sticking to my routine. So I am really proud of myself for doing that. I'm going to give myself a lot of credit for sticking with my routine. But even though I have been just like stuck here, not able to drive until yesterday, not able to really be mobile and move around until yesterday, it is, for those of you who've never been injured before, it's a special kind of mental block. And for those of you who have, you understand, like, even though I'm here and I'm quote unquote doing nothing every day, it's still really hard to find the motivation to want to do things when you're injured and you're not feeling well, and when you're in pain, and when you're not sleeping well, and all of that. It's been a struggle for me, and I'm really not sure why. And I really need to like dig into this, because normally I'm pretty resilient about setbacks, but for whatever reason, this dumb injury has made me feel really like inadequate and really unmotivated. So I'm trying really hard to just stay on my schedule, and I've been proud of myself so far that I've been able to do that. So I am going to keep it up. Thank you so much for being here and supporting. Thank you for liking and subscribing. And thank you for everything that you do for yourselves and for each other. And if you have questions, problems, concerns, or you just want to talk about the possibility of signing up for group or individual coaching, please send me an email at third-verse.com or ask Megan with 2 E's, ask MEEGAN at gmail.com. And I hope you guys have a wonderful night. Mojo, Miss Mosro, yeah, please do share. Happy. Send me an email. And I will see you guys again very soon. Lots of content coming over the weekend and then live on Sunday. So I hope to see you around in the chat and on the lives. And I'm really looking forward to connecting with you guys. So take care and have a great night.